we looked at, let me just, okay. Last time we looked at the different phases for designing, for creating database, okay, and we said we do have a requirement phase, conceptual design phase, logical design, and physical design, and we specified this is conceptual data model, which is, let's say, the big picture of your database, how your database will look, and the different, for instance, tables and the relations between those tables that are included in your database. Okay, logical model. This is another logical model where you start to define and create your database without specifying, for instance, the physical part or how you are going to store your data. Okay, this is an example of a database of student. Okay, it is a snapshot of this is what you will at the end. Okay, when we progress into next chapters, inshallah, you will be able to define your database like this. Okay, you, for instance, you will define database that does have this table, student table, course table, section table, grade report table, and these are the different fields inside your, for each table. For instance, for the student table, I do have a name, I do have student number, class, major. For the course table, I will have course name, course number, credit hours, department, and so on. And this is the real data. Okay, this is the data. When I look at the student table, for instance, right now, I can see I do have this record. This is the record. One row or one line is the record about a Smith student whose name is Smith. Okay, and student number 17, for instance, the class 1, major CS, and so on. Okay, so these are just a snapshot of a database of a student within university database. Now, let's see now what are the different characteristics of a database approach. Before the database approach, before we talk about the database approach, okay, we talk about an old approach for writing programs or accessing data, okay, which is known as traditional file processing. Traditional file processing. Now we'll compare it with the relational database or using a DBMS. When we talk about a file processing or an approach that will use traditional file processing, okay, here we talk about when you do have a user, okay, specific user will define his own files that is needed by some specific application. Okay, let's have a look. For instance, just to give you an example.
Doctor?
Yes?
Doctor, I didn't attend the last class. Then I went to the Google Drive to see the previous class. I couldn't find the videos.
Yeah, me too.
We don't get the videos.
I think we should be invited to all the classes.
Inshallah, we'll do
so
it, inshallah.
Access to.
Inshallah. Okay, can you see the John board, Shabab?
Yes.
Okay, now when we talk about the file processing, okay, let's say we do have accounting office or accounting department. I will have, for instance, registration. Registration department. Okay, we can have let's say accounting. Let's say we do have a library. Okay, these are the three different types of let's say department that we do have. Let's say at any organization or at university. in the file processing, شباب, when we talk about the old approach, الطريقة القديمة, okay, before we the new or the DBMS was developed, okay. Now, what they say, what was the way of storing data, okay? In the accounting department, for instance, they used to have a specific application, okay? A specific application. Let's call it accounting app, okay? And a registration office, they used to have the same thing, okay? They used to have another different application, okay? Let's call it, for instance, registration app, okay? And so on. When you do have a registration app, we do have the same thing for the library, okay? We go to the library, and the library has its own application, okay? Its own application. Library, for instance, app. Okay. Now, for each of those, okay, for the accounting application, the accounting applications need to access its own file, okay, where it does have data. Okay, here we do have data. This is the file. Okay, the file needed by this application. Okay. And the same thing applies for registration. The registration office, okay, their applications need to access a file. The library application also need to access some types of file. And it might happen that all those, okay, all those applications okay, all those applications, they might use the same data. Let's say because this is a university, okay? If I am talking about, for instance, if I am talking about, can you see my screen, Shabab, or it is disconnected?
We can see it.
Because on my side, it's still running.
We see the Jamboard.
But you cannot see the diagram, sir?
No.
Yeah, I can.
No, we cannot see it.
Yeah, it's still running. It's still down on my side. So I will move to, okay, it is coming now. Okay, I said that now the accounting department, the registration department, the library, for instance, department, they all use, for instance, or they want to access the same information about some specific student. Okay, let's say this. Okay, for instance, the registration office, the library office, they will all access, for instance, let's say Omar file or Omar information, which means that this information, okay, the same information is stored in the file that is accessed by the accounting department. It is the same file that is accessed by the registration office, and the same information can be found in the library. So what we can say about this type of storing the files, Shabab?
It's repeated, Doctor, right?
Not distributed. Yes, it is distributed, but
Not
do you think it is a
distributed.
good
I said-
idea? No.
No,
It's
I said
fragmented.
repeated. I said repeated.
Yes, repeated information. We do have what is known as redundant information. The same information is stored in the file that is accessed by this application. The same information we can have it at the registration office, and the same information about the same guy is within the library application. Okay, and now because each department needs such information, and here this is the problem. The problem is we do have redundancy because we do have the same information is repeated in many departments. Okay, we do have a wasted of storage space, and the problem is when you do maintenance, for instance, if you want to update Omar information, for instance, I want to update his mobile phone, what I have to do, I have to make extra effort to let know, for instance, to the accounting department, registration, or library, they have to update the same information, and it is not easy to here we are talking about one student, we are talking about 3 departments. What about if you do have hundreds of students and 10th of department? It's not easy to follow and update the same information. This is what you can find in the traditional file processing. Okay, Shabab? That means we said that each user needs to define and implement we said that each user needs to implement the files needed for a specific software application. Okay, this is what is known in traditional file processing, when it's used to store information within the, let's say, within files, instead of having one place where we can store all the information. In the other side, when we talk about the database approach, here we do have a single repository. What is meant by single repository? Instead of having those separated files, okay, we do have now one place. I do have one place where I do have data, okay, and here if you do have that accounting department, or we do have registration department, or a library, for instance, okay, here we do have the data. Our data is here, okay, and the access department, the department, if you want to access Omar data, he has just to go and take it from the same database. The registration department will take the data from the same database. Now, if I want to do some update, I don't have to go to the department, access account department or registration department to do the update. I will go to one place, which is my database. I will go here and do the update. And automatically, when any other department or any other existing department, okay, whatever the number of department you do have, okay, if they want to access the same data, there is no problem. And the data is synchronized, the data is up to date. And we do have only one place where we maintain our data. We say that we do have a single repository. That means we do have one place where we store our data and we maintain our data. We do it once. We define our data once, and it is accessed by many users repeatedly through queries, through transactions and application programs, whatever the way you are accessing, you are using to access your database, it is just one place. You access it from one place. Clear, Shabab? For the database approach. Okay? Now, in terms of the characteristics, when we talk about the characteristics of the database approach, okay, we do have what is known as self-describing nature of database, insulation, support of multiple view, sharing of data. Let's start with the first one, which is self-describing nature of a database.
Doctor, this is the first approach of database, or what?
Now, this is, we said we do have two approach. You do have file processing,
Yes.
And you do have the traditional file processing, and we do have database approach. Okay.
Okay.
We looked at the file processing. We finished with file processing. Now, what we are concerned about, we are talking about database approach. We are studying database approach. This is what we are going to study in our course. So let's see what are the different characteristics of having database approach. Okay.
Okay.
The characteristic of the database approach. The first one, which is known as a self-describing nature of a database. Now, this is a fundamental characteristic of this database approach, because it says that the database we do have, it doesn't only contains the data, but it contains also the description of the data, the database. If you remember last time when we talked about metadata, we have already talked about metadata. That means within the database approach system, okay, you do have a data and you do have the description of the database structure and constraint. Any requirement, any specification, any limitations, the data types of the data, all can be stored in the DBMS, which is known as, if you remember, we said we do have DBMS catalog that is used by the DBMS software. Okay, and as a user, for instance, if you are a database user, sometimes you need such information, and we gave an example last time. If you are a new one who is has been asked to do some database development within an organization, and that database has been created by another person who has left, for instance, the organization. So what you can do, you can just look at the database catalog or the metadata. You get all the descriptions and the structures, and if there are any constraints, you can find them described and defined within the metadata or the database catalog. This is what we mean by self-describing nature, because all the information is within, it is contained within the database. Of course, it is important to note, Shabab, there are new types of database, okay, system. You can find it. They are called not only SQL, for instance. Those new database, mostly they are used by mobile phones. Okay, let's say you store your database. You do have an application on your mobile phone, and that mobile phone access the data on the cloud. Okay, it does use a new type of database system. It is known as NoSQL or not only SQL, NoSQL. Okay, this type of new systems or new database system doesn't require metadata. Okay, what it does store? It does store the data. It is self-describing data. That means it will include the data itself and the value. Okay, it doesn't specify the data type, nothing. It is by on its own. It describes the data. We are not covering in this course. We are not covering that type of database. We said that we are covering relational database, where we do have we are using DBMS that is found in many organizations or in the market. Yes?
I have a sort of a general question. My
Yes,
question
go ahead.
is, so say, what is the need of a database management system? Say if given the example of this accounting system, accounting department and other departments, why don't all these departments just maintain a large a queue or a binary tree or just a normal data structure? I mean, why is there necessarily a need for a database management system?
So how can you access? The idea about is where to store your data. What is the way of storing your data?
Say if there's a business, they can just have a massive binary tree, and everyone can have access to this binary tree. And
even the binary tree, where you are going to store that, the binary tree will contain data, okay? And where that data will be stored, where?
It can be stored either locally or on the cloud. I mean, that's not
even if the cloud, yes, locally or the cloud, but in which form? This is the question. In which form you are going to store your data?
In its original form, or it can be encrypted?
No, we are not talking about encrypted on it. We are talking about the way to store it. Because let's say now if you want to access to search for something, what is your approach to search for some keywords within your database? If it is not defined, if it is it is not structured, okay, in somehow, okay, you need to find the way how you can access and query your database. Okay, as we mentioned, we are not talking about not SQL that is found on the cloud, for instance. We are talking about here about relational database. When we talk about relational database, we are talking about having our data stored in the form of tables. Okay, you store your data in different tables. That is part of your database. Okay.
Thank you for your answers.
Another type of characteristic for the database or the database approach is what is known as insulation between programs and data. Okay, we talk about insulation. Insulation, that means if we go back to our example for the traditional file processing, okay, you will find that the structure of the data files is embedded in the application program. What is meant by it is embedded in the application program? That means I will have, for instance, if you go, for instance, to if you have a C program, or let's say Java or C++, for instance. Okay, this is my programming language. Then what I will do, I will define inside this application, okay, the data is embedded inside the program. What is meant by embedded, Shabab?
It's part of the program.
Yes, it is part of the program. You will find here, for instance, let's say you will find Java coding. You will find Java coding lines or code for your Java, and you will find the data, and you will find the Java code, and so on. Okay, that means you will have within your program, it is a mixture of coding or codes, line of codes, plus the data itself. You have to specify the data. Even the structure of the data needs to be specified like a structure inside the program. This is where we talk about the file processing. When you talk about file processing, that means you will have, okay, the application that we have seen previously. Okay, the application, this application will have, it has been written in some types of programming language, and that application inside that program that is accessing that file, okay, you will find the data, the structure of the data is specified inside that application. For instance, if I want to add, for instance, if I want to change, okay, one field of my structure, for instance, if I want to add, let's say I do have here student information and I want to add mobile phone, okay, that means I have to change the structure within the program itself, because the data structure is embedded within my program. Any changes to the data, I have to do the changes to the program that is accessing that data, because the structure of the data is inside my program. Now, this is in the file processing approach. Now, if we go to the database approach, we do have that independence between the program and the data. Why? Because the database that was defined, okay, this database, or let's say this is my DBMS, okay, DBMS. This DBMS, as we mentioned, it is a general purpose software. What is meant by general purpose software? That means why I am using, if I tell you, for instance, I do have Oracle or MySQL. You think these two DBMS are only used by university, or they can be used by any other organization that does have database?
Any other organization.
Any, barakallahu fiik. That means without regard to where you are going to apply your DBMS. The DBMS is a general purpose. Here, because of the data within my database, I have that data and I do have that metadata, okay, without regard to looking at which application is accessing your database. If I do have to change, okay, if I have to change the structure of the data, I have to go only to one place to change the data. For instance, when you are accessing, let's say at its simplest example, when you access, let's say you are searching on the net for something, okay, you might find some user that will use Chrome browser, another will use Internet Explorer, another one will use a Firefox, for instance, okay, and all those users with different browsers, they are accessing the same database, Google database or Amazon database, for instance. Okay, and Amazon database, if Amazon database, for instance, wants to change the structure of its data, it will not look for all the application of the world to tell them we have changed. Can you please change the way to access it? Okay, it is not. We cannot do that. That's why when we do have the database approach, you do have such insulation. When you do have the program that is accessing the data is independent from the data itself. And this is the good thing in the database. Okay, database approach, if you want to change the data, just go to the catalog and change the structure of the data. You don't have to change the program that is accessing the data, because that database, as we mentioned, it is a single repository. You have only one place where you have your data and the structure of the data.
Dr. Ahmed.
You do the changes to any structure without being forced to change the program that is accessing your data. Yes? Yes, I've heard the question.
Yeah, Dr. Ahmed, my question is, I know this is an introductory course on data management systems, but would you touch on the database security and the different types of security mechanisms, or?
No, it's not part. It's not part of the program for the security. It's not part of the program for the database.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, Shabab. So I will stop here. We continue, inshallah, tomorrow. Okay.